What's going on, everyone? Welcome to this video. Welcome to my spoiler full review of Scoob. So this is the one where I'm just gonna talk about it all. So if you have not seen the movie, I don't know why you're here, unless you just don't care about spoilers, which if that's the case, then go ahead, watch this video. And this is the video that you guys can finally post comments down below if you have seen the movie full of spoilers. Let all the spoilers out in the comments. If people read them and get mad, well, it's their own fault for clicking this video. So, okay, where do I even begin? Let's go through each of the characters first. We're gonna start with our boy Fred, not our main guy, but like our leader. So, Fred in this movie, okay, when they're kids, I love him when he was a kid. The scene when he was a kid, he's just like grabs the axe and just throws it, and then once he like charges after the ghost and whacks him down. Oh my goodness, Fred as a kid. And he's all, maybe we should do this again. And Fred is a kid. And then also when he's older throughout the movie, oh my goodness, he is totally like nowadays Fred. You know, he still loves the mystery machine, which that's just a part of him now. You know, if he doesn't love the mystery machine, then it's like, are you okay, Fred? Are you feeling all right? You know, but oh my goodness. And then, okay, I loved when they were like having their argument in the car and he's all, the world is ones and zeros. Oh, the bantering was funny. Now, okay, I didn't really care for the whole part with the female police and him, you know, going all googly for her and whatever. You know, I'm a 100% Fred and Daphne shipper. But I will say they did it in such a way that, like, you know, a teenage guy, like, yeah, that would totally be a teenage guy. It really would, you know? And so, like, although I didn't really care for it, it did feel, like, partly realistic in a way, you know, like, and then, you know, when it was revealed to be dastardly, you know, he's all like, I have so many mixed feelings, and then he carried on the conversation when they were trapped, and he's all like, okay, but as like masks and costumes go, like, come on, you gotta give it credit, you know, like, okay, and then towards the end of the film, the ascot reveal was epic. So before the film came out, when like the first trailer had dropped, you know, everybody was like, where's the ascot? Why doesn't Fred have an ascot? Blah blah blah. And the director, Tony Cervoni, actually posted a thing on Instagram, you know, was basically like, you didn't think I'd forget the ascot, did you? Or something like that, you know. And so I was watching the movie, I was like, where's the epic ascot moment? And boy, did it live up to the epic moment. Oh my goodness, I loved the ascot reveal. I loved how they utilized the ascot. I mean, yes, it was for a very short moment, but I just loved the ascot moment. I really did. So altogether, Fred honestly feels very nowadays Fred. I mean, there were a few differences a little bit. I loved, okay, this is a very minor thing, but like he is very like caring, you know, for the gang, like even for Shaggy and Scooby and stuff. One little moment that, you know, was just, it's such a tiny little thing, but made me totally have more of like oh, he cares about the gang, you know, is when like the gang were riding in the mystery machine at night and they heard the police report, you know, basically that Shaggy and Scooby were in trouble, you know, and Daphne's like, the bowling alley, that's where Shaggy and Scooby, you know, hang out. And just the delivery, I think, of the line of Zac Efron, you know, being Fred, and he's like, oh no, you know, and like screeches the van, you know, turns the van around and goes like, I don't know, just how that part was played. Again, it's like a second of time, you know. He's like, oh no, then hurry and turns the van around. Just how they did that just felt to me like, oh my gosh, Fred's like, crap, like, I got, you know, we gotta go save him. Like, and it just felt so good, you know. It was like, Fred cares about his friends, and we've seen in other iterations, like, Fred has a lot of trauma in his life. And so he's like, gotta hold on to what he can. You know, maybe it's the mystery machine and the gang and stuff. So overall, I loved Fred in this movie. You know, I honestly wish we could have seen more of him, but he was great from what we got to see. Okay, now Daphne. Daphne honestly was probably my favorite character, not gonna lie. Daphne, I loved her character in this film. You know, she still felt like Daphne. She still had her danger-prone moments, and just how much she cares about just so much, you know, like, it was just very, it was portrayed very well, you know, how she helped Dusty. Like, I loved, that was one of my favorite scenes when they were stuck in the cage and whatever. And, well, at first, she's like leaning on the chair, and she's like, well, Shaggy and Scooby aren't here, so I'm trying to do their job, you know. They're gonna fall on something or whatever and kick something open. I'm just, you know, trying to fill in their gap right now. And I was just like, this is Daphne. And, you know, it gave me kind of Be Cool Scooby-Doo vibes of Daphne, and I really love that. But then also the whole part, you know, where she helps Dusty, you know, clean out the vacuum and whatever, and help him breathe. And oh, I loved that, like, side little, like, caring relationship between this robot and Daphne. It was just so cute. And then, like, you know, when they're flying in the mystery machine, when Dynomutt's flying them towards Athens and whatever, and one of the little rottens, you know, was about to shoot him down, and Dusty, like, sees Daphne, you know, in the mystery machine. He's like, wait, no, not them, like, stop, no, you know. I loved that. I loved it. And then at the very end of the movie, you know, when they get their next case, and she's all, you know, hey, Dusty, you'll take care of the shop for us, all right? You know, like, it was so cute, and I want to see more of it. Please keep Dusty in future Scoob or just Hanna-Barbera cinematic movies, please. Okay, I love, too, again, Daphne is just very caring about the gang, very, you know, supportive. And so, like, when they are kind of grumbling at each other, you know, kind of bantering at one another in the mystery machine, you know, she's the one that's like, guys, stop fighting, like, what are we doing, you know? And then it was so funny. We didn't eat lunch. We're just hangry. Like, the people I watched it with, we were all like screaming, laughing. We were like, ah! Like, it was such a great moment. So Daphne overall, I just loved her character, you know. I love too that she is still like the holder, the carrier of the Scooby snacks. She had them in her boot, you know. She's like, you know, good thing I always carry a spare, and that's why I always have a spare, you know. It just felt right, you know. So I loved Daphne's character. I love the design of Daphne too, you know, like, she obviously still looked like Daphne, even though there were some tweaks. She still had her whole Daphne color palette, you know. I love too that they kept her headband. You know, they took out her scarf, but they kept her headband. I really like that. Okay, so Velma in this movie. Velma was the one that I was most hesitant about watching the trailers. You know, I wasn't completely sold on Velma through the trailers, but then watching the movie, she was Velma. She was Velma. She was sassy. She was smart. She was still caring, you know, like, Velma was great, you know. I loved her sassy moments. I loved how at the end, after Shaggy basically sacrificed himself, you know, she was the one like that is like still thinking and was like, are we missing something? Like, I know I'm smart, but like, you know, am I missing something? You know, it was just like, there's got to be another thing. You know, she was still thinking, still like, okay, we got to do this. And I love too how when she was like, oh, I wish I had that clue from Dastardly's or whatever, you know, and Fred was like, oh, this? And I love how she was like, have you had that the whole time? You know, it was like, are you kidding me? And then again, Daphne, I know I already talked about Daphne, but Daphne's just like, better late than never, come on, we got it, you know, like, oh, it just felt so good. So again, Velma, I loved her sassy moments, you know, she's like, I love to shake the hand of whoever created this, and then, you know, and then throw that hand in prison for trying to kill our friends, right? Am I right? And then the whole, okay, can you skip the emotional punishment? Like, she just had some great moments. Now, I will say one thing, I was a little like, oh, I feel like kind of roles reversed, but like it totally can fit either way, was Velma was trying to pick the lock with a bobby pin when they were stuck in the jail cell thing. And I kind of felt like Daphne would have done that more, but again, at the same time, like, the role can be, you know, any girl, you know, either one of them could try to do it. But that was just a moment I felt like it was a little more of a Daphne thing that they gave to Velma, but it was still cool, you know, it was like giving Velma a little more like, okay, you know, I'm gonna try this. Now for her voice, again, that was the one that I was the most hesitant with in the trailers. I love it. I'm sold with Gina Rodriguez as Velma. I'm just sold with it. So, good job. All right, now Shaggy, of course, is one of our main characters. I know a lot of people are so turned off by his voice, but honestly, watching it, and I mean, of course, as many times as I have now, I'm so used to it with this version of Shaggy. I don't know if I could hear Will Forte doing the 2D version of Shaggy, but like for this particular version and style of Scooby-Doo, I'm sold. Again, I'm sold. I mean, yes, would I have loved Matthew Lillard to do Shaggy? Of course. But again, I'm not gonna hate on Will Forte at all. You know, he gave it his best. He tried. He did it. You know, I am sold. Now, as for his character, I definitely obviously felt like he was Shaggy. I loved his younger portrayal, you know, and I honestly like cried a few times. I've cried every time. But when he's alone and he's like trying to have lunch by himself and he made his friends and stuff, like I just like felt for him, you know? And then like throughout the movie when, you know, Scooby kind of goes with Blue Falcon and Dee Dee and Dynamite and stuff, like, you know, I felt that too. Shaggy was a little bit like, oh my goodness, like I'm losing my only friend, you know, like my one friend that I thought I would always have, I'm losing him, and so I feel alone again, you know? I don't know how I'm gonna make friends again. I don't know how I'm gonna do this again. You know, like I struggled so bad when I was young being alone, and now I have to do it again. And I don't always love storylines of Shaggy and Scooby not getting along, just because sometimes I feel like they're forced. But in this particular movie, I felt like it was done really well. You know, there was like a whole reason of why Shaggy and Scooby didn't get along for, you know, a time. And it felt right for the story, and it felt like it flowed very well. So I can applaud Scoob for doing a story of Shaggy and Scooby not getting along well. I enjoyed it this time. Most of the time I don't. The biggest one that's coming to my mind is Big Top Scooby-Doo. I didn't enjoy that version of them not getting along, you know, but again, Scoob did it well. Okay, Scooby-Doo, our main man, our main dog, Scooby-Doo. Oh my goodness, he's just Scooby-Doo. I don't know what else there is to say, honestly. He's Scooby-Doo. He's so cute as a puppy. So there's two moments where I was just like, oh my gosh, this is like totally a dog thing, you know? But when Dynamite came, you know, down the stairs and whatever, and like basically we were first being introduced to Dynamite and stuff, you know, and both Shaggy and Scooby are like, Dynamite! And whatever. And when Shaggy, you know, is like, of course, Dynamite, like, he doesn't go anywhere without Blue Falcon and stuff. And if you watch Scooby, he's just like, you know, like, pacing, his paws are not going down, and wagging his tail and his tongue's out and stuff. Like, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is a dog when it's excited. Like, they did that so well with Scooby-Doo, you know? He was like, just total dog moment right there.
Man, Dynamite is the dog wonder. Blue Falcon doesn't go anywhere without him.
And then another time where I felt it was totally a dog moment, although we got to hear him talk, you know, because it's Scooby-Doo. But, you know, I feel like this is kind of what we would hear from dogs usually, is when Scooby, you know, got his Super Scoob suit put on and stuff. And he's all, what do you think, Shaggy? You know, like, he was like, Shaggy, what do you think? Like, look, what do you think? You know, like, I just was like, oh, that is such a dog thing, you know, and if they could talk, they totally would be like, what do you think, you know, owner? What do you think, human? Like, how does it look, you know? I felt like that was such a dog moment. So, again, I don't know what else there is to say about Scooby-Doo. He's Scooby-Doo. He's great. Frank Welker is a legend. Frank Welker is a god. He cannot die. He is just... Okay, now for some of our secondary-ish characters. Blue Falcon. So again, we learn in this movie, this is Blue Falcon's son, Brian. So it's not the original Blue Falcon, though we do get mentioned and see somewhat the original Blue Falcon. First and foremost, I love this Blue Falcon design. It is just so cool. Love the design. It just, yes. His voice, too, again, since it's not the original Blue Falcon, like, his voice was so great. Mark Wahlberg did such a great job as Blue Falcon. I loved his voice. You know, he had such a, like, I can be a hero, but I can also be very comedic voice, you know? It just flowed so well. And I love just his story. I loved Brian, you know, trying to, like, figure out, you know, how to be a superhero. Kind of having this, like, well, I didn't really sign up for this. I was just kind of thrown into it, so I'm gonna be the kind of superhero that I want to be and whatever. And, you know, I kind of liked his story of figuring out his version of a superhero, more or less. And I really liked that story, and I loved the interactions with him, Shaggy, and Scooby. You know, he was just like, oh my goodness, you're my kind of guys. Give me all the snacks. Like, I'm gonna party with these guys. Like, I loved it. I loved his character. Now, Dynomutt, again, I love Dynomutt's design in this movie. He just looks so good. Now, he was one that I was also a little hesitant on the voice as well. I was a little worried about Ken Jeong doing the voice of Dynomutt, but again, watching the movie, I am sold once again, you know, and his voice definitely fits the, like, updated and upgraded and, you know, new Dynomutt, where he's not as clumsy as he once was, you know, where he can be stable now, you know, and he can focus and he can help the team now, you know, so it fit very well, I feel like. And I loved Dynomutt in this movie. Again, like, yes, he is a different Dynomutt than what we're used to, but again, you know, he's had so many years of upgrades and maintenance and updates and stuff that he's not the clumsy Dynomutt that he once was. You know, now he's able to help the team, help his team, and help his partners and everything. And I never felt like he was too serious, you know? There were times, you know, he's like, okay, we gotta stand together and do this, but then he had his funny moments of, like, typical Brian, or me, Brian, you know, like, he had these funny moments. And again, we did see him have kind of a classic clumsy Dynomutt moment. Again, it wasn't necessarily his fault because Velma was tapping into his signal, and so it was kind of making him go AWire and whatever. And, you know, but again, that was a very nice and very fitting how they did it. Call back to the original Dynomutt, you know. They did it in such a great way to call back to the original Dynomutt, you know, where it made sense in the story and it made sense to his character that he is now. And I loved that moment, you know, how his, like, feet all tangled up and stuff. I was like, that is Dynomutt. That is classic Dynomutt. And yet, it makes sense for this story. I also love that Dynomutt was basically the one to really get Blue Falcon, or Brian, kind of up on his feet and realize that he can be a hero, that he doesn't have to be the same hero that his dad was. You know, he can be his own type of hero and everything. And I loved that moment because he's like, that's when Dynomutt finally called Brian Blue Falcon instead of Brian. And it really just, like, made that connection, you know. Finally, Blue Falcon and Dynamite are once again, you know? And so I loved that moment between them. Okay, now Dee Dee Skies. Dee Dee is like the pilot of the Falcon Fury. She is like at the helm of this operation. She was very well utilized, and I love that. I love that they brought this not as well-known character into the story and gave her a new purpose. And yet, again, at the end of the credits, during the end credit sequence, we saw there could still be some opportunity to start the Captain Caveman and Teen Angel's team, you know, where Captain Caveman joined the Falcon Force in the end credits. So, you know, maybe. But in this movie, I loved her. You know, she had such like a sassy personality, and yet, you know, she's like, she's very much in control no matter what's going on, you know, and she's able to work around all these guys. She's working around all these guys that are just kind of goofing off and doing this and that. She's like, it's me, I'm the real hero. Like, I loved this character. I loved Dee Dee Skies and how she was utilized. I also love that she was very daring, you know, she didn't care to get her hands dirty, and like when they were flying into the Mesic Mountain, you know, she was just like, we're gonna pump it, we're gonna go. Even Dynamite was like, Dee, no, stop, you know, let's not, and whatever. And she's like, here we go, you know, like she wasn't like a danger prone. She was just like, we're gonna make this work no matter what, so here we go. And I love that about her. Okay, now for our villains, of course, Dick Dastardly. Oh my goodness. Jason Isaacs, who plays Dick Dastardly, could not have been more perfect for this part. He fit so well. The voice was amazing, and just his performance. And again, I loved how they brought back Dick Dastardly's classic, iconic drat. You know, I loved his drat, double drat. They utilized his drat so well. I loved it that they brought that back. And again, okay, this was such a like touching moment. I love that his whole purpose in this movie, he was trying to get his dog back, you know? He was trying to rescue Muttley from what he trapped him in. And so this whole time, you know, at least halfway through the movie, we don't know that his motive was to get Muttley back, you know? And then once he finally is in the underworld, you know, he's like, finally, you know, my treasure. And he goes to Muttley, you know? And then he's like so worried that Muttley actually died here, you know? And then I love Muttley. Muttley, oh my goodness. We'll get into him in a second. I loved how they were able to make Dick Dastardly feel villainous, and yet you still sympathize for him. You know, you sympathize that he lost Muttley. You sympathize that he's not able to get to Muttley now. You know, like, that was the whole thing. Like, he was just trying to get to Muttley, and that he couldn't do it without Scooby-Doo, yet we didn't know that's what was going on for a lot of the movie. And, you know, but it made you sympathize for him, you know, and yet still feel scared of him, you know? Okay, and I love his robots, these robots that he made. He calls them the Rottens from Scooby's All-Star Laugh Olympics, the really Rottens. That was such a, like, it couldn't have been better. They couldn't have named these little robots anything else. They really couldn't have. Like, it was just perfect. The design of Dick Dastardly 2, I really enjoyed. I know a lot of people were worried about him not having his hat, but we did see in the background a few times him with his hat. So maybe, you know, his hat could come into play in a future film. That could be cool. See how it comes into play. But, you know, he still felt like Dick Dastardly to me without it. Okay, Muttley. Muttley, honestly, is probably my favorite dog in this movie. He is so cute, and the whole flashback scene when Dick Dastardly was telling the gang that Muttley was sacrificing himself and whatever, but in reality he wasn't. The whole time I was first watching this movie, I was like, no, Muttley, no, don't do it, like, no. And I was like, he's lying, he's not telling the truth. I was just like, no, Muttley, come back. Anyways, I felt so sad for Muttley. I love Muttley. Like, I know we didn't get to see a whole lot of him, but oh my goodness, the moment that they reunited, it was so cool, so wonderful, so touching. I love the moment when they reunited. And I love that Muttley still too was like playing around with him, like, I'm dead, but he, you know, his classic laugh. Something else I didn't necessarily expect, but was very, very pleasantly surprised, is that he, not only did he have his classic laugh, which of course you have to have that, but he had his little grumbling, like, fuzzle wuzza, you know, like, I was just like, this movie is amazing. It's just amazing. I also love a couple of lines that he got. One that really sticks out to me is sayonara, suckers. Like, I was just like, yes, Muttley, you know, he'll say a few words here and there. It was great. I love Muttley. Okay, so that's all the characters. Now, for the story, I really enjoyed the story. I was actually kind of surprised how fast the origin part of the movie went by, but yeah, I can see why they did that, to get into the real story of the movie. You know, that part was just to make us really feel for what was coming in the movie. But overall, I really enjoyed the story. It definitely felt Scooby-Doo to me still, even though it was a little more superhero-esque than mystery-esque. I still felt like it was Scooby-Doo because there was a mystery to solve. Again, the mystery aspect was for Fred, Daphne, and Velma, and again, I feel like people aren't giving them enough credit. People keep saying that they didn't get a lot of screen time, which yes, they didn't get as much screen time as other characters, but I definitely feel like they got way more screen time in the movie than a lot of people are giving credit for. But where I'm talking about where it still felt like a Scooby story, you know, again, there was still a mystery, you know, it was just solved kind of fast, but there also was this big threat, and throughout it, we learned actually some history on real life stuff, you know, on Greek mythology and stuff, and I loved that aspect of Scooby-Doo where even though, you know, there's this villain and there's this mystery, it'll still take some time to teach you about some of this actual history stuff, you know, and this movie still did that too, talking about Athens and Greek and Cerberus and everything, and I thought that was really cool, you know. It was kind of subtle, but it still is there. Now, I loved the overall design of Cerberus and the whole thing with Cerberus, you know, that you had to get the 3 different skulls of Cerberus. I love that. And I have to say, at the end of the movie, when, you know, Shaggy sacrificed himself and everything, and we're made to believe, you know, he's gone and everything, and, you know, Scooby's just like howling and like, no! Like, oh my goodness, I cried. I cried. And I remember I watched this with my parents not too long ago, and my mom was like, what? No, there better be another movie. We have to save Shaggy. And then obviously he came out and my mom was like, oh, okay. No, I was going to say we can't end the movie here. I was like, I know, I felt it too, mother. So another character that we're introduced to is Captain Caveman. Now, the reason I didn't put him in the characters aspect is because he has a very short time in the movie, but overall, I really enjoyed this character. I really enjoyed how they introduced him. I honestly, again, I do wish that we would have seen more of him, but I do feel like they did just enough introduction of this character that now we can explore this character in future films and in future stories way more, and it basically made you intrigued of this character. It made it so you want to know more about this character. You want to know where they came from, how they came to be the protector of one of the Cerberus skulls and everything, and you know, and so again, I loved his design, I loved his voice, you know, I loved who voiced him, I loved the overall just aesthetic of where he was and what he was doing and everything. And again, I love that they didn't give us a whole lot of him because now we can explore way more of him. And again, from the end credits sequence, we supposedly are to believe that he has now come out of the Mesic Mountain and is now a part of the Falcon Force. So again, maybe hinting at future formation of Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels. Okay, so for the end of this movie, again, the end credit sequence, we see that Adam Ant, Grape Ape, Jabberjaw, and Captain Caveman have joined the Falcon Force now, which is really, really cool, really, really interesting. Then we see the gang are talking to Dr. Quest, so who knows where that may lead into. We also saw Frankenstein Jr. And Rosie the Robot. But at the very end, we see that Muttley actually gets Dick Dastardly out. He gets Dastardly out of jail and they're able to escape. And that's where the end credit sequence basically ends, at least the story-wise of it. And so now we're to believe that, you know, Muttley and Dick Dastardly are out of jail. And so they're a threat again. You know, who knows what they're going to be planning next. We saw on the jail cell walls that Dick Dastardly had papers of Wacky Race's cars and vehicles and stuff. So this could be leading into a Wacky Races movie. Could be leading into a Falcon Force movie. Don't know. I'm very intrigued where this can go now. But now we know Dick Dastardly is out. He got out again. So, okay, so for some final overall thoughts of this movie. Again, I love this movie. I feel like it was such a love letter to not only Scooby-Doo, but just the Hanna-Barbera franchise all together. It was such a love letter with the classic sound effects, you know, all throughout the movie. I love that. The bright and colorful animation, it just felt so right. You know, everything fit so well together. And yes, at times this film can feel like it's going in a few different stories at a time. You know, this was Hanna-Barbera. They had a lot of stories that they told throughout these shows. And so, you know, you kind of had to have these different franchises and different characters and stories in this one movie and kind of tell them as you're telling this one big story within the movie. And it all did come together in the end. And, you know, more viewings kind of helps you learn it and connect it a lot more. And I just love this movie. I really did. Again, it is in my top 5 favorite Scooby-Doo movies now. It kicked Music of the Vampire out down to 6. So now Scoob is in my top 5 favorite Scooby-Doo movies. Again, this is such a love letter to not only Scooby-Doo, but Hanna-Barbera in general. And I just loved it. I love the characters. I love all the side characters. Judy, her name is Judy. Judy from the bowling alley. Judy Takamoto. So guys, there you go. There's my review for Scoob. I loved this movie. It hit all the right notes. There were a few things that didn't happen that was a little sad. Again, that were like Scooby 101. One being that Velma never loses her glasses in the movie. We see her lose her glasses in the credits sequence. Another thing is Scooby was never bribed with Scooby snacks. That was another thing that I just kind of felt like is Scooby 101 that didn't happen. But stuff that was Scooby 101 that did happen was Shaggy and Scooby dressing up, you know, as something and tricking the robots, you know, or the monster or the villains, you know, and, you know, tricking them to believe that there's someone else doing something else and everything. And then also the whole, like, running back and forth across the screen, but, like, every time you go off the screen, you come from a completely different side or a completely different place. You know, when Shaggy and Scooby are running around from Cerberus, that was such a great moment. Well, and the fact that they played the Scooby-Doo or Are You tune, you know, during that was so cool. So there's a lot of little details that I loved. But again, overall, I love this movie. I hope you guys all enjoyed it too. Now is your time. Go ahead. Let me know all your spoiler-filled thoughts on Scoob. Just let it all out. I love this movie. I'm so glad it's finally here. It is finally out. It is 6-year development and we're finally here. So guys, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. We did it. Scoob is here. It has come. What's next for the Hanna-Barbera Cinematic Universe? we're gonna have to see. I'll catch you in my next one. Goodbye!